when the team that you're on lacks the spark for innovation and development, um, how can you reinvent yourself in a company and take on a different path completely unrelated to where you are now? So I said this earlier, I'll say this again. Your current team is an external thing that has nothing to do with your decision to reinvent. Your decision to reinvent really needs to be separate from this, because it's going to be a big decision and it cannot be based on what other people are doing or not doing at any given time. So if this is aligned with where you want to go and you want to go in a different direction, and that deep down has everything to do with your values, your passion, your purpose, then go for it. Doesn't really matter whether they lack the spark or have all the spark in the world. I've been in great jobs where things are great, and I've had to leave that because it was no longer aligned with my values, passion, and purpose. And it's not an easy decision to make. Maybe it feels a little easier when things are bad because you can just say, oh, you know what, I got to get out of here. But regardless, you know what, it's important that you know why you want to go somewhere and that you don't just run away from something. This brings to mind this difference between running away from something and running towards something. When we run away from something, such as team that lacks spark and lacks innovation and lacks development and all these kinds of things, then you tend to, like, when you run away from anything, you're usually looking over your shoulder, like you're trying to make sure that that thing is not catching up to you. You don't really pay attention to where you're going. So you never know what you might run into. You might run into a worse situation, and I have seen that happen. When you run towards something that you know you want to go to, when this is the place you want to be, totally different story. You approach it differently, and it doesn't matter what's behind you. All that matters is what's in front of you, and that's what you want. And you know exactly how to run there, which way you're running. You know if you're off course or on course. But when you run away, you don't tend to know either of those things. So I think here it's important that you make sure, again, separate this situation that's not so good, whatever that might be in terms of the lack of spark, as was mentioned in the question, and focus on, do you actually want to reinvent yourself? That, I think, is what's going to matter the most. The other thing here is, do I take on a completely different, unrelated path to where you are now? Again, it depends. Are you aligned? Is this in alignment with your values, passion, and purpose today? So really think about that. As far as reinventing yourself inside of a company, experiments. Just like I said earlier, test out ideas. This is going to make, no worries, Erica, thank you so much. Test out your ideas and make sure that you are putting them into action and just sampling them. The person who wrote me this, I saw that you're at IBM. The great part about being at IBM is it's such a massive company. So you can experiment without anybody else knowing that you're experimenting. You can experiment with a completely different organization. And I did this a lot. I say this because I actually did this a lot while I was there. And it was a great way for me to explore different interests, build different skills, simply by running experiments in other places other than where my org was. Things weren't always great in my org. Sometimes there were leadership issues and challenges happening beyond me that there was nothing I could do to fix them by myself. And so I thought, well, I could just sit in this and kind of not enjoy it, or run some experiments and find a way to add value elsewhere. And those experiments ended up leading to a lot of reinventions, both internally and then in the end, externally. So think about how you can find an experiment, and don't think big, just think really small. You can have big ideas, but test small. So dream big, test small is what I would say in this particular thing. And this goes for other companies as well, not just IBM, but especially the larger the company, the easier it is to do it without too many people knowing, meaning if you just want a new audience, that is. But you can also do this with small companies as well. And your experiments can also happen outside of the company. So think about how you might be able to maybe test out a new interest in a volunteer organization or in a volunteer capacity. Great way to be able to test out some new interests and just see how they go.